Beneath the golden sands of Egypt lies a tale spanning over 3 millennia. A civilization shrouded in mystery, innovation, and timeless grandeur. From monumental pyramids to enigmatic pharaohs, ancient Egypt has captivated the imagination of scholars and adventurers alike. But what secrets remain hidden in this land of eternal wonders? Join us as we embark on an epic journey through the annals of time, unraveling the enigmas of a civilization that still whispers from the tombs of its kings. Long before the rise of pharaohs and monumental architecture, the Nile Valley was home to early human communities. Archaeological evidence indicates that as far back as 700,000 years ago, Paleolithic humans inhabited this region, utilizing stone tools and leading nomadic lifestyles. The fertile banks of the Nile provided abundant resources, fostering the development of these early societies. Around 10,000 BC, a significant climatic shift led to the desiccation of the Sahara, pushing human populations toward the Nile. This migration marked the beginning of the Neolithic Revolution in Egypt, characterized by the transition from hunting and gathering to agriculture. Communities began domesticating plants and animals, leading to permanent settlements and the establishment of complex social structures. Between 5,500 and 3,100 BC, distinct cultural groups emerged along the Nile, notably the Badarian, Naqada, and Gerze cultures. These societies exhibited advancements in pottery, metallurgy, and burial practices, reflecting increasing social complexity. The Naqada culture, in particular, is renowned for its intricate ceramics and the development of early hieroglyphic symbols, laying the groundwork for Egypt's writing system. Culmination of the pre-dynastic period saw the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under a centralized authority. This unification is traditionally attributed to a ruler named Menes, also identified as Narmer in archaeological records. The Narmer palette, a ceremonial artifact, depicts the king wearing both the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, symbolizing this monumental unification. With unification achieved, the first dynasty, circa 3100 to 2900 BC, marked the beginning of the early dynastic period. Pharaohs such as Narmer and his successors established Memphis as the capital, strategically located at the juncture of Upper and Lower Egypt. This era witnessed the consolidation of state power, the standardization of writing, and the development of monumental architecture, setting the stage for the grandeur of ancient Egyptian civilization. The early dynastic period also saw the formalization of religious practices and the divine association of kingship. Pharaohs were considered earthly embodiments of the god Horus, establishing a theocratic system that would endure for millennia. Elaborate tombs and mortuary practices from this period reflect a profound belief in the afterlife and the importance of maintaining cosmic order, or Ma'at. Advancements in technology and art flourished during this time. The use of copper tools became widespread, enhancing agricultural productivity and craftsmanship. Artisans produced intricate jewelry, pottery, and early forms of sculpture, indicating a sophisticated aesthetic sense and technical skill. These developments not only served practical purposes, but also reinforced social hierarchies and religious beliefs. The nascent Egyptian state engaged in trade with neighboring regions, establishing connections that facilitated the exchange of goods and ideas. Artifacts such as Lebanese cedar, Nubian gold, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, found in early Egyptian sites, attest to these extensive trade networks. Such interactions contributed to the cultural and economic development of early Egyptian society. The foundations laid during the early dynastic period were instrumental in shaping the trajectory of ancient Egyptian civilization. The establishment of a centralized state, advancements in writing and art, and the codification of religious practices created a resilient cultural framework. This legacy would endure through subsequent dynasties, influencing art, architecture, and governance for centuries to come. The conclusion of the early dynastic period seamlessly transitioned into the Old Kingdom circa 2686 to 2181 BC, often referred to as the Age of the Pyramids. The innovations in state structures developed during the formative years enabled the construction of monumental architecture and the flourishing of Egyptian culture on an unprecedented scale. This period set the stage for some of Egypt's most iconic achievements, reflecting the enduring legacy of its early civilization. With the rise of the Third Dynasty, Egypt entered an era of prosperity, stability, and unparalleled architectural achievements. Pharaoh Djoser, the first king of the dynasty, initiated a transformation in royal tomb construction, moving away from traditional mastabas to more elaborate structures. His chief architect, Imhotep, designed the world's first step pyramid at Saqqara, a revolutionary feat that set the precedent for future monumental projects. The Old Kingdom saw the formalization of the ideology of divine kingship. Pharaohs were now seen as gods on earth, ruling with absolute authority as intermediaries between the gods and the people. The concept of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order, became central to governance, ensuring that the pharaoh maintained balance and harmony in Egypt. This divine status enabled kings to mobilize immense resources, including laborers, for large-scale construction projects. The Fourth Dynasty ushered in the golden age of pyramid building, beginning with Pharaoh Sneferu. He constructed the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid at Dashur, refining techniques that would culminate in the grandest of all, the Great Pyramid of Giza. His successor, Khufu, also known as Cheops, ordered its construction, which remains one of the most remarkable feats of human engineering. The colossal structure, composed of over 2.3 million limestone blocks, stands as a testament to ancient Egypt's engineering prowess. Following Khufu, pharaohs Khafra and Menkaure also built their pyramids at Giza, completing a necropolis that would inspire awe for millennia. The Sphinx, attributed to Khafra, further added to the grandeur of the site, symbolizing royal power and divine protection. The immense construction projects of the Old Kingdom required a highly organized bureaucracy. The vizier, the highest official under the pharaoh, oversaw tax collection, resource allocation, and workforce organization. The government was divided into regional districts called nomes, each governed by a nomarch. These administrative divisions played a crucial role in maintaining Egypt's stability and economic prosperity. Egyptian art flourished during the Old Kingdom, adhering to strict conventions that emphasized balance, order, and symmetry. Tomb paintings and statues depicted idealized images of the deceased, ensuring their continued existence in the afterlife. Meanwhile, religious beliefs centered around the sun god Ra, who was worshipped as the supreme deity. Pharaohs increasingly aligned themselves with Ra, culminating in the rise of the solar temple cult, particularly under Userkaf, the first king of the Fifth Dynasty. These religious shifts paved the way for future theological developments in Egyptian history. Despite its emphasis on internal development, Egypt maintained extensive trade networks. Expeditions to Punt brought back incense, ebony, and exotic animals, while trade with Byblos secured valuable cedar wood. Relations with Nubia were particularly crucial, providing access to gold and other resources essential for Egypt's economy and religious rituals. The Sixth Dynasty witnessed the gradual decline of centralized power. Pharaoh Pepi II, who reportedly ruled for over 90 years, faced increasing challenges from regional governors, nomarchs, who grew more independent. Prolonged droughts and economic strain further weakened the state, leading to food shortages and internal unrest. By 2181 BC, the Old Kingdom had disintegrated into a period of political fragmentation known as the First Intermediate Period. Local rulers, rather than the pharaoh, held power, and Egypt entered a phase of turmoil marked by conflict and instability. The once mighty centralized state had crumbled, leaving a void that would take decades to fill. Despite its downfall, the Old Kingdom's legacy endured. The grandeur of its pyramids and the administrative systems it established laid the foundation for Egypt's future resurgence. The next era, the Middle Kingdom, would bring a renewed sense of unity and innovation, setting the stage for the continued evolution of Egyptian civilization. After the collapse of the Old Kingdom, Egypt was fragmented for over a century during the First Intermediate Period. Warlords and local rulers, known as nomarchs, struggled for control, and the once unified civilization had devolved into chaos. However, from the ashes of disorder, a powerful leader emerged, Mentuhotep II of Thebes. Around 2055 BC, he successfully defeated rival factions, reunifying Egypt under his rule and marking the beginning of the Middle Kingdom. Mentuhotep II established the 11th dynasty and set the tone for a new era. Unlike the pharaohs of the Old Kingdom, who built towering pyramids to display their divine power, Middle Kingdom rulers focused on governance, economic expansion, and military strength. The concept of kingship shifted from absolute divinity to a more practical administrative role. With the unification of Egypt, Thebes became the new political and religious capital. The rulers of the Middle Kingdom implemented reforms to strengthen central authority, while allowing regional governors a degree of autonomy. Pharaohs reorganized Egypt's bureaucracy, placing loyal officials in strategic regions to prevent another collapse like the First Intermediate Period. They also introduced a more professional standing army, ensuring that Egypt could both defend itself and expand its borders. During the 12th dynasty, Egypt experienced a golden age under pharaohs such as Amenemhat III and his son Senusret III. Amenemhat I moved the capital from Thebes to Ichtawi, a city near the Fayum region, to exert greater control over the country. He also constructed defensive fortifications, including the walls of the ruler, to protect Egypt's eastern frontier. Senusret III, his successor, expanded Egypt's influence into Nubia, securing vital trade routes and access to gold mines. Under his reign, Karnak Temple, dedicated to Amun-Ra, saw significant expansion. This temple would grow to become one of the most important religious centers in Egyptian history. The Middle Kingdom is often regarded as the classical age of Egyptian literature. Texts such as the Tale of Sinuhe, the Instructions of Amenemhat, and the story of the shipwrecked sailor reflect the values, wisdom, and philosophies of the time. Art and sculpture also evolved, depicting more realistic human features compared to the idealized forms of the Old Kingdom. Instead of glorifying rulers as godlike figures, Middle Kingdom statues often captured the pharaohs with lines of age and worry, emphasizing their burden of leadership. Military campaigns into Nubia continued under later Middle Kingdom rulers, particularly Senusret III. He led aggressive expeditions deep into Nubian territory, constructing a series of fortresses along the Nile to secure Egypt's southern border. These fortifications served both as military outposts and trade hubs, solidifying Egypt's control over valuable resources such as gold, ivory, and exotic animals. The Sinai Peninsula also became a target of Egyptian expansion, as the region was rich in turquoise and copper. Expeditions were sent to establish mines, further boosting Egypt's economy. While Ra had dominated Old Kingdom religious beliefs, the Middle Kingdom saw the rise of Amun as a supreme deity. This shift was largely due to the increasing power of Thebes, where Amun's cult was centered. Over time, Amun merged with Ra to form Amun-Ra, who was worshipped as the king of the gods. Temples to Amun were built and expanded throughout Egypt, particularly in Karnak. The power of the priesthood also grew significantly, foreshadowing the influential role it would play in later periods of Egyptian history. Despite its achievements, the Middle Kingdom eventually weakened. The later rulers of the 13th dynasty struggled to maintain control, and political instability returned. Around 1650 BC, a foreign group known as the Hyksos took advantage of Egypt's internal weakness and seized power in the northern delta region. These invaders, likely of Levantine origin, introduced advanced military technology, including horse-drawn chariots and superior bronze weaponry. They established their own rule in Lower Egypt, marking the beginning of the Second Intermediate Period. Though the Hyksos controlled parts of Egypt, native Theban rulers in the south resisted their presence. This resistance would eventually lead to the reunification of Egypt under the new kingdom, ushering in an age of unprecedented military expansion and dominance. Egypt's subjugation under the Hyksos in the Second Intermediate Period was a humiliation that the Theban rulers would not tolerate for long. The native Egyptian dynasties, though weakened, began organizing resistance under Seqenen-Retau. The conflict with the Hyksos was brutal, and Seqenen-Retau himself likely died in battle, as his mummified body bears gruesome battle wounds. His son, Kamoso, continued the struggle, launching aggressive military campaigns against the Hyksos strongholds in the north. However, it was his successor, Ahmose I, who finally expelled the Hyksos around 1550 BC. After besieging their capital, Avaris, Ahmose crushed the foreign rulers and pursued them into Canaan, ensuring they would never return. This victory marked the dawn of the New Kingdom, a period of military expansion, economic prosperity, and architectural grandeur. The New Kingdom pharaohs were no longer content with merely defending Egypt. Learning from the Hyksos, they adopted chariot warfare and advanced bronze weapons, transforming their army into a formidable war machine. Ahmose I and his successors pushed Egypt's borders further than ever before, securing dominion over Nubia in the south and establishing control over Canaan and Syria in the northeast. To prevent future invasions, Egypt adopted a proactive military strategy. Instead of waiting for enemies to strike, the pharaohs launched preemptive campaigns, establishing garrisons and vassal states across the Levant. Tribute from conquered lands filled Egypt's treasuries, fueling an age of unparalleled prosperity. One of the most remarkable rulers of the New Kingdom was Hatshepsut, a female pharaoh who defied convention and ruled Egypt for over 2 decades. Although she initially served as regent for her stepson, Thutmose III, she eventually declared herself pharaoh, adopting royal titles and even depicting herself as a male king in statues and inscriptions. Hatshepsut's reign was marked by peace and economic expansion. She focused on trade rather than war, most notably reopening trade routes with the fabled land of Punt, a mysterious kingdom rich in exotic goods like myrrh, incense, ebony, and gold. Her most famous architectural achievement was the mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, a magnificent terraced structure that still stands as one of Egypt's greatest monuments. However, after her death, her successor Thutmose III sought to erase her legacy. He ordered her name removed from monuments and her images defaced, an act of historical revisionism that remained a mystery for centuries. If Hatshepsut was a ruler of diplomacy, Thutmose III was a ruler of war. Often called the Napoleon of Egypt, he led 17 military campaigns, expanding Egypt's empire to its greatest territorial extent. His most famous victory was at the Battle of Megiddo, circa 1457 BC, where he decisively crushed a coalition of rebellious Canaanite kings. Thutmose III's conquests solidified Egypt's dominance over the Near East. Wealth from tribute and trade poured into Egypt, funding grand temples and monuments. He expanded Karnak Temple, dedicating vast resources to the worship of Amun, the supreme god of Egypt at the time. Among the many rulers of the New Kingdom, none was as controversial as Akhenaten, formerly Amenhotep IV. His reign saw the most radical religious shift in Egyptian history. He abolished the traditional polytheistic worship of Egypt and established a monotheistic devotion to Aten, the sun disk. Akhenaten moved the capital to Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, where he built temples dedicated to his new god. He systematically suppressed the powerful Amun priesthood, shutting down their temples and erasing their influence. This religious upheaval alienated much of the Egyptian elite and the common people. After his death, Akhenaten's successors, including the famous boy king Tutankhamun, reversed his policies and restored the traditional pantheon. His reign was so despised that later pharaohs attempted to erase him from history, referring to him as the heretic king. If Thutmose III was Egypt's greatest general, Ramses II was its most iconic ruler. Also known as Ramses the Great, he reigned for over 6 decades, constructing massive monuments and leading military campaigns that cemented his legacy. However, Ramses II's rule was not without controversy. According to Islamic tradition and the Quran, Ramses II is widely associated with the pharaoh who clashed with Prophet Musa, Moses. The biblical and Quranic narratives describe Ramses as a tyrant who enslaved the Israelites and defied divine warnings. His arrogance and cruelty led to his downfall when he pursued Moses and his followers, only to meet his tragic fate as the Red Sea parted and then engulfed him and his army. Beyond his religious significance, Ramses II fought one of history's most famous battles, the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites circa 1274 BC. Though Ramses claimed victory, the battle ended in a stalemate. leading to the world's first known peace treaty. His reign was also marked by grand construction projects, including the Abu Simbel temples built to glorify his rule. Among Egypt's greatest rulers, Ramses II, circa 1279 to 1213 BC, is often remembered as the mighty pharaoh who led grand military campaigns, built colossal monuments, and claimed godlike status. But beneath the splendor of his reign lies a darker legacy, one of oppression, arrogance, and defiance against divine warnings. According to Islamic tradition and the Quran, Ramses II was the pharaoh of Musa, Moses, the tyrant who enslaved the children of Israel, Banu Israel, subjected them to brutal labor, and defied the message of Allah. The Quran describes his reign as one of great corruption and injustice. Indeed, Pharaoh exalted himself in the land and made its people into factions, oppressing a sector among them, slaughtering their newborn sons, and keeping their females alive. Indeed, he was of the corruptors. Surah Al-Qasas 28:4. Under Ramses' rule, the Hebrews were forced into hard labor, building Egypt's grand cities and temples. Despite the clear signs brought by Musa, his staff turning into a serpent, his hand shining with divine light, Ramses refused to believe. Instead, he mocked Musa and demanded miracles, only to be faced with the plagues that struck Egypt one after another. As the Quran recounts, Ramses and his court witnessed a series of divine punishments. Floods and locusts devastated the land. Frogs overran the cities, and lice tormented the people. The Nile turned to blood, making it undrinkable. A mighty storm of destruction fell upon the land. Yet each time, Ramses hardened his heart, refusing to free the Hebrews. He saw himself as a god, proclaiming, "I am your Lord, the Most High." Surah An-Nazi'at 79:24. But his arrogance would soon lead to his downfall. After the final plague, the death of Egypt's firstborn, Ramses reluctantly allowed Musa and his followers to leave, but his hatred and pride would not let him accept their freedom. As the Israelites made their way toward the Red Sea, Ramses mobilized his chariots and set out to crush them. The Quran describes the dramatic moment when Musa, by Allah's command, struck his staff against the sea. The waters parted, forming towering walls, creating a path for the Hebrews to cross. And we inspired to Moses, "Strike with your staff the sea." And it parted, and each portion was like a great towering mountain. Surah Ash-Shu'ara 26:63. Ramses, blinded by rage, led his army into the path. But just as the last of the Israelites reached safety, the sea crashed back down, drowning Ramses and his men. In his final moments, he realized the truth, crying out, "I believe that there is no God except the one in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am of those who submit." Surah Yunus 10:90. But it was too late. His fate was sealed. The Quran also reveals a striking prophecy about Ramses II's body. "So today we will save you in body that you may be to those who succeed you a sign. And indeed, many among the people of our signs are heedless." Surah Yunus 10:92. In a stunning historical discovery, the mummified body of Ramses II was found in 1881, remarkably well preserved. This has been interpreted as a fulfillment of the Quranic verse, his body serving as a warning to future generations. While Ramses II's reign was a high point, his successors faced mounting challenges. Internal strife, corruption, and economic troubles began to weaken Egypt's hold on its empire. Foreign threats loomed, particularly from the Sea Peoples, a mysterious confederation of maritime raiders who launched devastating invasions across the Mediterranean. During the reign of Ramses III, Egypt successfully repelled the Sea Peoples, but the kingdom never fully recovered. The cost of constant warfare drained the treasury, and political instability increased. The priesthood of Amun, once kept in check, grew too powerful, controlling vast amounts of land and wealth. By the end of the 20th dynasty, Egypt was once again fractured. The centralized power of the pharaoh diminished, and regional warlords and priests held greater influence. The glorious age of the new kingdom came to an end, giving way to a period of division and decline. As Egypt weakened, it became vulnerable to foreign invasion. The Libyans, Nubians, and later the Assyrians all exerted control over different parts of the country. In 671 BCE, the mighty Assyrian king Esarhaddon invaded Egypt, capturing Memphis and declaring himself ruler. Although Egypt briefly regained independence under Psamtik I of the 26th dynasty, the empire never fully recovered. In 525 BCE, Egypt fell to the Persians under Cambyses II, marking the start of the First Persian occupation. The pharaohs were reduced to mere vassals, and Egyptian culture was increasingly influenced by Persian administration and customs. Although a brief native resurgence occurred under the 30th dynasty, circa 380 to 343 BCE, the arrival of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE permanently ended the rule of native Egyptian kings. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great marched into Egypt as part of his conquest of the Persian Empire. Unlike previous foreign invaders, Alexander was welcomed as a liberator. The Egyptians, weary of Persian rule, hailed him as their new pharaoh. He visited the oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis, where he was declared the son of Amun, reinforcing his divine status in Egyptian eyes. To solidify his rule, Alexander founded Alexandria, a city that would become a beacon of Hellenistic culture, trade, and learning. However, he left Egypt soon after to continue his conquests, never to return. Following his death in 323 BCE, his generals divided the empire, and Egypt fell under the rule of his trusted general, Ptolemy of Sota. Ptolemy I established the Ptolemaic Dynasty, 305 to 30 BCE, a Greek ruling family that governed Egypt for nearly 300 years. Unlike previous conquerors, the Ptolemies embraced Egyptian traditions. They adopted the title of pharaoh, worshipped Egyptian gods, and supported temple construction. Yet, they remained fundamentally Greek, ruling over Egypt as foreigners while maintaining their Hellenistic customs and language. Under Ptolemy, the second Philadelphus, the dynasty flourished. Alexandria became a center of learning, home to the Great Library of Alexandria and the museum, attracting scholars from across the Mediterranean. Trade prospered, and Egyptian culture fused with Greek traditions, giving rise to a unique Greco-Egyptian identity. However, the Ptolemaic rulers were often embroiled in court intrigues, civil wars, and power struggles. The dynasty saw a rapid decline due to internal conflicts, economic mismanagement, and increasing Roman influence. The most famous of the Ptolemaic rulers was Cleopatra VII, r. 51 to 30 BCE. A highly intelligent and politically shrewd leader, Cleopatra sought to restore Egypt's power by forming strategic alliances with Rome. She famously allied with Julius Caesar, bearing him a son, Caesarion, and later aligned with Mark Antony, hoping to counter the growing dominance of Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus. However, following their defeat at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, Cleopatra and Antony retreated to Egypt. With Rome closing in, Antony took his own life, and Cleopatra followed soon after, allegedly dying by the bite of an asp, though some believe she was poisoned. With her death in 30 BCE, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, marking the end of over 3,000 years of pharaonic rule. After Cleopatra's demise, Egypt was annexed by Rome and became the personal property of Emperor Augustus. The Romans saw Egypt as an economic treasure, providing grain to feed the empire. While Egyptian culture persisted, its temples and traditions were increasingly overshadowed by Roman administration. The construction of grand temples, such as Dendera and Philae, continued, but Egypt's role was now as a supplier to Rome, rather than an independent civilization. Despite the grandeur of its past, Egypt had lost its sovereignty. The age of the pharaohs had ended, and a new era under Roman rule had begun. With the death of Cleopatra VII in 30 BCE, Egypt was officially annexed by Rome and became the personal province of Emperor Augustus. Unlike other conquered territories, Egypt was not governed as a standard senatorial province, but was directly under the emperor's control. No Roman senator could enter Egypt without the emperor's approval. a reflection of its immense strategic and economic value. Egypt's fertile lands made it the granary of the Roman Empire, supplying vast quantities of grain to feed Rome's population. This immense agricultural wealth made Egypt one of the empire's most economically significant regions, but it also ensured that the province remained under tight imperial control. Under Roman rule, Egyptian culture and religious traditions persisted, though with increasing Roman influence. While the emperors maintained the pretense of honoring Egyptian gods and building temples, true power lay in the hands of Roman governors and military officials. The elite class, consisting of Greeks and Roman administrators, largely controlled governance, taxation, and military matters. The Egyptian priesthood, long a powerful institution under the pharaohs, saw a decline in influence. Roman officials sought to limit the power of the temple estates, redirecting wealth and land to the state. Despite this, temples such as those at Dendera, Esna, and Philae continued to be built and expanded, showcasing a blend of Egyptian and Greco-Roman styles. Religious syncretism was also widespread. The fusion of Egyptian deities with Greco-Roman gods led to figures like Serapis, a deity combining aspects of Osiris and Zeus, who was widely worshipped in Alexandria. However, while Egyptian traditions remained, the Romanization of Egypt became increasingly apparent in the cities. Latin was introduced as an administrative language alongside Greek, and many urban elites adopted Roman customs. One of the most profound transformations in Egypt during Roman rule was the rise of Christianity. Christianity arrived in Egypt during the 1st century CE, traditionally linked to Saint Mark, who is said to have founded the Church of Alexandria. Over time, Egypt became one of the major centers of early Christianity, producing influential theologians like Origen and Clement of Alexandria. By the 3rd century CE, Christianity had gained a significant following, especially among the lower classes who found its message of salvation appealing in a society dominated by Roman hierarchy. However, early Christians in Egypt faced waves of persecution, particularly under Emperor Diocletian, r. 284 to 305 CE. His brutal repression of Christians led to the period known as the Era of the Martyrs, during which countless Egyptian Christians were executed or tortured for their faith. Despite this, Christianity continued to spread, and by the 4th century CE, it became the dominant faith in Egypt. The conversion of Emperor Constantine the Great and the subsequent Edict of Milan, 313 CE, which legalized Christianity, marked a turning point. With Theodosius I's decree in 391 CE, paganism was officially outlawed. The famous Temple of Serapis in Alexandria was destroyed, and traditional Egyptian religion gradually faded. The last functioning Egyptian temple, Philae, was closed in the 6th century under Emperor Justinian I, marking the final end of ancient Egyptian religious practices. Following the division of the Roman Empire in 395 CE, Egypt became part of the Byzantine, Eastern Roman Empire under Emperor Arcadius. The Byzantine rulers maintained firm control over Egypt, but their rule was often marked by oppression and heavy taxation. This led to growing dissatisfaction among the population, particularly among Egyptian Christians, who increasingly resented the Byzantine-imposed Chalcedonian Christianity. The Coptic Church, which had grown in prominence, followed a different theological interpretation than the official Byzantine Church. This theological dispute led to persecution of the native Coptic Christians, who were frequently harassed and even killed by imperial forces. The heavy tax burden imposed by the Byzantines further worsened the situation, making Egypt a deeply divided and discontented province. These tensions made Egypt vulnerable to external threats, and in 641 CE, a new power emerged on the horizon, the Muslim Arabs, who would bring an end to Byzantine rule in Egypt and usher in a new era. By the early 7th century, Egypt was a province in decline. The oppressive rule of the Byzantine Empire, combined with religious conflicts between Chalcedonian Christians and the native Coptic Church, created widespread discontent. Heavy taxation and administrative corruption had weakened Byzantine control, making the province ripe for conquest. In 639 CE, the Muslim general Amr ibn al-As, under the orders of Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, led an army into Egypt. The Byzantine forces, led by Governor Cyrus of Alexandria, attempted to resist but were unable to withstand the disciplined and determined Muslim army. The Battle of Heliopolis, 640 CE, was a decisive confrontation in which Muslim forces defeated the Byzantine army, breaking their hold over Lower Egypt. The fortified city of Babylon, modern Cairo, was besieged and fell after prolonged resistance. In 642 CE, the capital city Alexandria surrendered, marking the end of Byzantine rule in Egypt. With this victory, Egypt became a province of the Rashidun Caliphate. Unlike the Byzantines, the new rulers were relatively lenient toward the local population. The Coptic Christians, long persecuted by the Byzantines, initially welcomed the Muslim administration as they were allowed to practice their faith in exchange for the jizya, non-Muslim tax. Amr ibn al-As established the new administrative capital at Fustat, near modern Cairo, and oversaw policies that restored stability and prosperity to the land. Under the Umayyads, 661 to 750 CE, and later the Abbasids, 750 to 969 CE, Egypt remained a vital economic and agricultural center, supplying grain and revenue to the larger Islamic empire. The Arabization and gradual Islamization of Egypt began, though Christianity remained dominant among the rural population for centuries. The Abbasids exploited Egypt heavily, increasing taxes and ruling from afar, which led to rebellions and unrest. Dissatisfaction with Abbasid rule paved the way for local dynasties to emerge, culminating in the rise of the Fatimid Caliphate in 969 CE. The Fatimids, a Shia Islamic dynasty, conquered Egypt in 969 CE and established a new capital, Cairo, which would become one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world. The Fatimids encouraged science, philosophy, and trade, making Egypt a center of learning and culture. They built the famous Al-Azhar Mosque, remains one of the oldest universities in the world. Despite their achievements, internal instability and economic decline weakened their rule. By the 12th century, Egypt was once again a target for foreign powers, including the Crusaders, who launched multiple invasions. This period saw the rise of one of history's greatest Muslim leaders, Salah ad-Din, Saladin. In 1171, Saladin, a Kurdish general and the vizier of the last Fatimid caliph, abolished the Fatimid Caliphate and established the Ayyubid dynasty under Sunni Islam. Saladin became famous for defeating the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin, 1187 CE, and reclaiming Jerusalem from the Christians. He transformed Egypt into a major military and political power. The Ayyubids invested heavily in fortifications, including Cairo's citadel, which still stands today. However, after Saladin's death in 1193, his successors struggled to maintain unity. The Mamluks, an elite military class, began to dominate politics, eventually seizing power in 1250 CE. From the dawn of the Pharaonic era to the conquests of the Islamic caliphates, Egypt remained a land of unparalleled significance. It was the cradle of one of humanity's oldest and most advanced civilizations, where kings were worshipped as gods, and colossal monuments stood the test of time. The pyramids of Giza, the temples of Karnak, and the Valley of the Kings all serve as eternal reminders of the grandeur of ancient Egypt. With the arrival of Islam, Egypt entered a new chapter, becoming a center of learning, trade, and military power under dynasties like the Fatimids, Ayyubids, and Mamluks. It transformed from the heartland of the pharaohs to a cornerstone of the Islamic world, retaining its position as a bridge between Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. Yet, despite the changing rulers and conquests, Egypt's soul endured. The echoes of the past remain in its ruins, its literature, and its people. The Nile, which had once nurtured the world's first great civilization, continues to flow, binding the present to the legacy of its ancient past. This concludes the entire history of ancient Egypt, a saga of power, conquest, and civilization that shaped the world as we know it. If you enjoyed this journey through time, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical documentaries.